So we really haven't made any update videos on my car. Doesn't mean there hasn't been any progress, believe it or not, there actually has. And so here's your update video. So let me walk you through kind of what we got going on and the process of, when you do a new build and a new engine and drivetrain and all the stuff that you got to go through. And back in the day, you throw an engine in, you could kind of makeshift wire it up, pour some gas down the carburetor, fire it up. It's not really like that anymore. So anyways, let's go take a look. So it may not look a whole lot different, but there's a lot of details here that needed to happen to get this thing ready to fire. So we have a cooling system. We got hoses, we got a radiator, it's got water in it. So a little trick for you guys that we do here as the train goes by is when I put water in these things, a lot of times I take the upper hose and some LS swaps, your upper hose might be on this side, but what I'll do is I'll take the upper hose, turn it up, and then I pour the water in until the water starts coming out of the steam vent hole, and it fills the block up. So, because what happens is a lot of times you get a air bubble on this side of the thermostat, and that's or actually on the other side of the thermostat, and it'll never open. And so, had good success with that. So, anyways, check off the list: cooling system. So we had to do wiring, had to wire this thing. All the wiring's done for the most part. Inside, obviously, the car still nothing on the inside of this thing. But it's ready. You see the plug right there. That's for the gauges. They just plug in a couple sending unit deals. And anyways, our speed hut gauges will be up and functioning. So we got power to this thing. Next thing we had to do was all the accessories, right? So because you can't really use off-the-shelf parts on a car like this. Yeah, I'm just jabbing myself. So anyway, I made a power steering reservoir, and Sean came by and gave me a hand and came up with a pretty trick power steering reservoir. It just feeds right into the pump, and it holds a lot more fluid. And let's look inside this thing. It's pretty cool. So there's a baffle inside. So anyways, so one of the things that I like to do also is, if I have the opportunity, is fill the system up. There's a big cooler. I'll show you that in a second. Is spin the pump, cycle it, turn your wheel back and forth, bleed a lot of the air out of this thing, because once it fires up, your fluid could drop down to almost nothing, especially on a system like this. So we got power steering, and then in the front, we got plumbing here. We got power steering cooler and an oil cooler, so we had to plumb everything. And these are really kind of the same coolers. Actually, the power steering cooler isn't the same one we had on there before. This one's a little bit bigger, but the oil cooler was. But I mean, it still had oil in it from the last engine, so we had to clean it out, put new O-rings on the fittings. So all that stuff needs to be done. You need an oil system. So we got a cooling system, we got accessories, we've got well, technically an oiling system, and we'll go over that in just a second. So the other thing we had to do was the cable. So we got the cable run on there. So we got a fuel system. There's gas in this thing, and I cycled the fuel pump by just jumping the relay to run all the fuel up and then out this hose here, just to make sure there was no debris in the line, just so it doesn't go and plug up the injectors or do anything stupid. So now the whole circuit is complete. So we'll cycle the fuel pump a few more times once we get ready to fire this thing, to make sure there's no leaks or anything like that. So that's one of the checklists. So we got oil, we've got cooling, fuel, we've got accessories, got our cooling fan. Here's our cooling fan setup. As you can see, it bolts to our closeout panel, and this is just a copy of our regular closeout panel. We just made one. I made one in carbon fiber. So anyways, that's all good. Wiring, electrical's all done. So got relays and stuff there. So the last thing we're gonna do is we need to prime this oil system on this thing before we run it. This engine, a lot of times we just pull the plugs out, crank it over until it gets oil pressure, with the EFI system, the fuel system shut off. That generally works really good, but I built this engine over 6 years ago, and it just has assembly lube in it, and it's been sitting for a long time. So I'm gonna prime it. So my idea to prime it is I'm going to use a garden sprayer with a pipe plug, and we're gonna plumb this into, there's a port on the front corner of there. I have an adapter in there with an 1/8 inch pipe fitting, and we're gonna pressurize it. I'll pull the valve cover off until I see oil coming up through the push rods and stuff. Then you'll know that it's pressurized, and then I'll crank it over a couple of times while I'm pressurizing it. Make sure everything's all oiled up. So then once we've got oil, the next step involves the laptop. So I've built the tune, and it's ready to load onto the laptop. One of the things I need to do is this ECU was bought a long time ago, so it's probably got version 4 or 5 of the Holley software on it, Holley EFI software on it. So I need version 6. I'm going to run the latest version, obviously, on it, and so I got to update the firmware on the ECU, pain in the ass. But anyway, so we'll walk you through the steps of all this stuff, hopefully leading up to a successful firing of this bad boy. So it's summertime here, and it's getting hot. So anyways, keep watching. As you can see, we actually got oil pressure by pumping that thing. It'll actually bleed down. So the garden sprayer is working. I put a full quart in, and then I put another 1.5 quarts in here all the way to here. And so we've put probably at least a whole another quart. So it's got 2 quarts in it. And it looks like, if you look closely here, we're getting some oil to the top end. So anyways, so if anybody's wondering what we're using in this thing, we're using this good stuff. So we'll keep pumping it and see if we can get it to come out all the push rods. All right, as you can see, as I pump it, you get oil out of these things. The other side, I checked the other side, and it's getting oil into the valve covers too. So I'm gonna put some oil in the crankcase, and then I'm gonna crank it over without any spark plugs in it, and just, you know, basically get it full oil pressure, and we'll move on to the next thing, loading the tune. So it's interesting, when it's cranking, it's not showing any oil pressure because it's a digital gauge. And I think it takes a minute for it to get going, but obviously when I let the key off and it cycles, we had about 15 pounds of oil pressure. So anyways, so we got that done. Next step is to load the tune. Once we load the tune, it'll kick the fuel pump on when you cycle the key, and then we can check for fuel leaks. All right, so we got the firmware update done. Now we need to just so we have an official tune on the car, and if we do this, go in here, fuel pressure 51 pounds, so that's good, and holding. It's dropping slowly, so that means we're not spewing fuel everywhere. So if I cycle the key off and then on, I don't know if you can hear that, but the fuel pump is on. USB link. So we got kind of high fuel pressure. I'm not sure why, but we'll see what's going on with that. So anyways, we've cycled the fuel pump a couple of times. The system has been bled, but we really need to fire it first before we know specifically. But so we have a tune on this thing, so theoretically it should be ready to fire. Take 2.
Hit it, Bo.
I don't hear the fuel pump.
I heard when you first turned the key on, but the first time I didn't.
Right, I don't hear it now. There's no fuel pump.
No, you should hear it the whole time, right?
The fuel pump? Yeah.
We got 42 pounds right here.
Right, but that's not it. The fuel pump's not working, dude. Something's not. All right, take 3.
Balls. that don't seem right.
Oh, fuel.
Fuel primed about 8 fucking thousand times. It may not have even fired the injectors with the cam sensor not.
Yeah, probably hasn't. But it made one little fart out the exhaust. That makes me think it did something.
What the fuck, dude?
Maybe it needs more battery.
All right, well, as you can tell by my attire, it is completely another day. We've had a problem with, for some reason, the engine was really hard to crank. We crank it and it just struggled like the battery was dead. So changed batteries, charged batteries, changed starters, thought maybe that was a starter, was a problem. Took plugs out, took rockers off, took everything off the front of the engine. Cranked it over by hand and it just felt like it had some weird hard spots, some whatevers. Took the valve covers off, just checked everything to see, make sure everything was clearancing it. And for some reason this morning, came in with no plugs in it, cranked it over and it just like no effort, no problem. Put the plugs in, did the same thing, put the rockers all back on, everything's good. So, I'm gonna try it one more time. Hopefully, fingers crossed, see if this works. Well, it's been a hard, tough day, a couple days, and so I think that worked. And we're gonna button up a few more things and see if we can get it to run for a little bit longer of a period of time. Check everything. Oil pressure looks good that I can see. This is a tune on an engine that was real similar to this, so it really should be pretty close. All right, so you saw the pictures of the area on the block and the starter kind of conflict. I think possibly the chance that maybe it was causing the starter to be in there a little cocked even though it was tight, and maybe making that gear have some weird clearance issues with the ring gear. So anyways, I think we're ready to give this thing, we've already run it, obviously. Check to see if the starter and everything's going good so we can move on to other stuff. So let's give this thing a fire, see what it does. Hit the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll have some more here pretty quick. I think I'm going to get motivated to keep working on this thing, even though it's about 400 million degrees in here. Yeah, it's hot. Thanks for watching.